Navy SEAL number 275 approves of this product. I am a Navy SEAL, and I Navy SEALed all over fucking brown people. And I approve of this product.
Over the last few months, I've had the misfortune to lug around this brick masquerading as an optic, propped up by nostalgic propaganda and the military-industrial complex. The maple syrup-sucking saps north of the border keep gleefully peddling on people posturing that this could make a good optic for the savvy civilian soon to be parted from their money. This optic is a one-trick pony, a gag, an optic for the delusional and the cloner fags. The Elcan DR1-4. Now, full disclosure, I got this optic from Andrew, the biggest supporter of the channel, so thank him for this. Armament Tech did reach out to me a little while ago for some SHOT Show stuff, and I let them know how I felt about the Elcan. But they took it like a champ, so that's nice to see. What's not nice to see is the price tag of these tubes. For the Legacy Elcan that I have here, it's a mere $2,000 and change. For the new options that are somehow worse, you're looking at two Romeo 5s over $3,000. And that gets you some pick rail welded on top and an updated, their words not mine, reticle. So already we're talking about a very expensive optic, but look at the upsides. At least it's lightweight. At least the glass is good. At least the eye relief and eye box is good. The mount is good. At least it's durable. Does it hold zero? Now, this colloquial curb stomping is brought to you by my Subscribestar members, so if you want to keep the beatings coming, go ahead and sign up on there. The Elcan has two things going for it: huge field of view at 4x, and daylight bright illumination that lasts longer than Grand Thumb and a Radiant Booth Girl. But let's dig a little deeper, shall we? There's still some meat on those bones yet. My Elcan probably has the worst glass quality in its price category, the price category below it, and probably the price category below that. On a bright and sunny day, the glass looks decent. Colors are very muted, almost brown or blue depending on the lighting. Image flatness is good, it looks very natural. Around the edges you get this blue-gray color shift, which is very noticeable, but overall the image isn't bad, it's just not great. It's also not super bright. In overcast or low light environments, it just doesn't look particularly good. Again, keep in mind that hefty price tag. Now, perhaps that has something to do with the two prisms being hidden behind additional layers of glass, as the front glass pane is more sacrificial than practical, but I repeat myself. Also of note, maybe the newer ones have better glass, but for an extra $1,000, I ain't taking that risk. Now, I'm only making this next comparison to gently jibe the ribs of the geriatric Elcan enjoyers before I switch to the knife. A $300 Vortex Venom LPVO has a more pleasing image to me. Not as flat, not at all, but in terms of colors and brightness, the Elcan is lacking. Another comparison to LPVOs is the weight, which is pretty similar. The DR1-4 comes in at about 24 ounces of aluminum, steel, glass, and seasonal depression. Most LPVOs with mounts come in between 22 and 26 ounces, so you really aren't getting a significant weight reduction like you would with other real prism optics. The DR in the Spectre DR stands for die retard. Dual roll, meaning you have a 1 and 4x prism hooked up to springs and levers like a medieval torture rack, and you can swap between them at will or against your will. Let's start with the 1x, which is probably the worst 1x of any optic I have used to date. And that might sound hyperbolic, but I don't think so. Yes, the image is flat and natural looking. Yes, the field of view is huge, coming in at 146 feet at 100 yards, making it the biggest of any optic out there, but that doesn't matter at 1x, almost at all. The problem is, again, the glass quality itself isn't great, and while the field of view is huge, so is the optic. This is what I'm going to call a high occlusion optic, meaning that the body of the optic, the bezel size, and its proximity to your face occludes a huge amount of your peripheral vision. Something I haven't mentioned, but the trade-off for that huge field of view is the tightest eye relief and eye box of a 1x prism of all time. Thanks, Raytheon. The real prism inside of the body is tiny, so to get that field of view, they just make you get as close to the optic as possible. So to compare, a low occlusion optic is anything that by distance, size, and design occludes less of your field of view and periphery. The Primary Arms GLX 1X prism, while only touting half the field of view, occludes so much less of your vision that it makes it much more pleasant to actually use. Keep in mind that it also has an eye box and eye relief, so it's also better to use on the move, odd positions, around cover, and doesn't take up more than half of your periphery when pulled 1 inch away from your face. Also, all of this is at 1x, where field of view doesn't really matter, since all we want to do is put that dot on the target and pull the trigger. Again, the 1x on most cheap LPVOs is more forgiving and more usable than the Elcans. Now, to get to the mode you want and probably bought the optic for, you simply throw this switch forward and back to get to your desired magnification. It's very quick, easy to hit, and probably my favorite magnification adjustment out there. Just something tactile and nice about it. Now, the field of view is still massive at 4x at nearly 50 feet, which is insane for a 4x optic. Now, as you would expect, the eye box and eye relief are also tighter at 4x than they were at 1x, but the trade-off is a good amount of magnification and a huge field of view. All of the same problems with occlusion still exist at 4x, but again, the trade-off is more or less worth it. Talking about the reticle briefly, we have a very thick BDC out to 600 yards for point targets, and a floater scenting dot that illuminates to more than daylight bright. Below the BDC, we have our area targets out to 1,000 yards for use on a 5.56 LMG or the 5.56 IAR we have at home here. Some people think that the reticle is too thick at extended distances, but I don't think it was ever meant to be precise to begin with, so that doesn't bug me much. We also have some auto-ranging features in the bottom left corner of the glass, which is nice and out of the way. I think this is where the Elcan shines and where I liked using it the most. A heavy, stable rifle from a stable position taking full advantage of that magnification combined with that huge field of view. In that role, I quite like it. Most of the time, I wouldn't even use the 1x as it does have the ability to have a top dot mounted, so that is what I would recommend for almost all of your 1x needs. Then the actual 1x prism is there as a backup to your backup dot or something like that, I guess. Either way, if you can put it in a role that takes advantage of that magnification and field of view, awesome. Now, before we move on, the illumination comes in 2 modes, bright, but only the center dot, or very dim and the full reticle. And by very dim, I mean very dim, like only usable in low light situations. Battery life is also measured in the hundreds of hours rather than minutes on most LPVOs. Now let's get to the mount. It's convoluted, complex, doesn't work part of the time, and is probably only there to fill some requirements from Big Army that it must be quick detach. Even though most people zip tie down the arms levers so that it's no longer QD, but that's besides the point, since when would they let common sense get in the way? So the arms levers cam the steel feet into position on your rail to hold the optic in place. Except when they don't. There is no adjustment on the arms levers, so on some of my uppers, the optic just slides back and forth, very cool, and on my out-of-spec jackal, the optic just won't fit in the first place, but I guess that's actually doing me a favor. Thanks, Raytheon. Now, there is a fix. If your steel feet aren't clamping down on your upper, the manufacturer came up with an easy solution. Hit it with a hammer until it fits your upper. Fantastic, why didn't I think of that? While I'm at it, why don't we just finish the job on the rest of the optic? Now let's talk about the adjustments. The Elcan has no internal adjustments, which makes the optics themselves a little more robust by putting all the moving parts and springs on the outside of the optic. Unfortunately, now the adjustments are on the outside of the optic. The windage adjusting is accomplished by pushing the body left and right. The elevation adjustments comes by tilting the body up and down. Now the elevation dial in the back has a little locking piece which must be pushed out of the way and then put back in place after you have achieved 0 to hold it in place. The whole optic body can still be moved up and down as it's really only held in place by an exposed spring, so in theory, dirt, debris, temperature changes can affect that spring and move you to 0. That's not a bug, it's a feature. Also, at one point I mounted this thing on a rifle with iron sights and didn't notice that the rear scope cap was touching the sight, so no matter what I did, I couldn't zero the optic. I was hitting about 2 feet high at 50 yards because the whole body was being lifted up ever so slightly by that rear iron sight. So in terms of durability, I would wager that it's more durable than most, if not all, LPVOs, but it's still going to be less durable than fixed mag prisms and good red dots. There's just a lot of small, exposed, moving parts on the Elcan. So what did I like about the thing? The 4x field of view and the reticle works well enough for mid-range, and on a high volume system, I liked it a lot. You combine that with a top dot, and that's how I had the best time with it. But it's heavy, $2,000 to $3,000 depending on what version you buy. The glass isn't great, the mount isn't great, and it mostly holds 0, which somehow sounds like a compliment to the Elcan. So if I wanted a good 4x option with a top dot, the venerable Trijicon TA31 still exists, Has better glass, half the weight, half the cost, good field of view, not as good, but still very good. You throw on a top dot on there and bam, you end up with something better in most regards. If you aren't paying for the Elcan, it might be okay for your specific role, but if you are paying for your own stuff, there are so many options out there that eclipse the Elcan in terms of usability and functionality. Would I buy one? No. If I had 4 rifles laid out in front of me, one with a good red dot and magnifier, one with a good LPVO, one with a good prism and top dot, and one with the Elcan on it, I would shoot the Elcan twice. But with all of that out of the way, guys, go ahead and try to convince me that I'm wrong in the comments down below. Go ahead and try and change my mind. I guarantee you, if you try to defend your purchase a little harder, it might just happen. But with all that out of the way, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you in the next one. God bless.